Okay, so just sit yourself on your lift and just find levelness underneath your seat bones. So just feel that you can just have a little rock from side to side. Just draw the buttock flesh out to the side so that you feel that you're sitting firmly on your seat bones. Just have a little kind of wriggle about. So there's levelness underneath the seat bones, there's levelness underneath the feet. Grip around your knees and then lift and open the chest. Drive the front chest upwards, listening to the sound of the breath. So just draw your attention into the breath right from the start. Soften the jaw and your tongue. Soften your throat. Just consciously draw the breath in through the nose. So just looking, before we started, through the Alpha and Omega of Trikonasana by Prashant Iyengar, Mr. Iyengar's grandson. And there was this really useful diagram that kind of helped with the, kind of just the image of yoga. And it was like the words breath, body and mind in three kind of boxes. And at the beginning, it's kind of breath, body and mind. And so that's the way it's kind of placed on the page. But by the end of that session, by the end of your practice, it's hopefully squeezes the breath, the body and the mind together so that there's this kind of alignment. So you usually got breath, you got body, you got mind, and we try and squeeze those elements together so that the breath, the body and the mind really do work in unison. So attune your ears to your breath. Soften your jaw and your tongue and your throat. So breath and body and mind, breath and mind kind of come together when you listen to the breath. Every breath is unique, like the flicker of a flame. So it's becoming conscious of the properties of each breath. Listening to the sound of the breath, feeling the physiological responses to the breath. Keeping your eyes fixed on something ahead of you that doesn't move. Bring your hands into Namaste, press the palms firmly together. Just continue to listen to the breath. And then with an exhalation, allow your eyes to gently close. So in activation of yogic practice, we can separate or divide the mind in two by the conative mind and by the cognitive mind. And you could say that the conative mind is the volition, the kind of muscular attempt to kind of draw the mind into the pose, to focus the body so that you do the work. So it's the aspiration, the inspiration. The conative mind is the front brain. And then the cognitive mind is the observer. So there's a separation between the front of the brain, which does the kind of inspiration and aspiration, and the back mind, or the back of the brain, that observes and corrects and learns. So it's not always easy to separate the conative mind from the cognitive mind. So it's useful to activate your ears. So activate your hind ear hearing, the hearing behind you. Creating a spectrum of aural awareness behind the brain. So focusing and attuning your ears to the sounds behind you. Perhaps you notice that attempt, that aspiration to draw the hearing to behind you makes you lift the chest a little bit, maybe it even makes you lean back a little. So that conative action to strive to listen creates a physical outcome as well. Maintain the hind ear hearing and then draw your awareness to the fore ear hearing in front of you. So maintaining that broadness of hearing behind you, develop consciousness of the hearing in front of you. It's almost as though you create a circle of radar around the head. And then gently draw the ears to acknowledge the sounds below you, lower ear hearing. So we can attune our ears outside in order to draw our attention inside. Maintain long, slow, deep, deliberate breaths. Feeling that the palms of the hands are an energetic center of the pose. Elbows drawing in towards the palms. Almost like the energy radiates up through the fingers, energy radiating out of the palms, into the arms, into the chest, into the head and into the legs. Maintaining the hind, the fore and the lower ear hearing. Draw your chin down to meet your chest. Spend a moment to seek to generate a genuine, heartfelt sense of gratitude for something or someone. To that feeling as you release the backs of your hands down toward your knees, palms facing upwards, and then as you raise your head, allow your eyes to softly open. Just grip around the fronts of the knees, lift and open the chest, drive the breath in through the nose. With an exhalation, turn to the right side. So see if you can divide your conscious mind into the mind that wants to go into the pose, to drive into the pose, maybe overdo the pose, and the mind that observes the feeling of the pose. It's the conative mind and the cognitive mind. Do they work against each other, or do they work in unison? So the aspiration to do the best pose we possibly can, is that balanced with observation and feeling? Just come back to the center, grip around your knees, lift and open the chest. Again, just feeling that there's that aspiration to do the best pose that we can, but the observation of that pose. So sometimes when we lift the chest especially, we kind of really overwork in the lumbar. So feel that you lift the chest, but then observe the responses to that lifting, so that it's not kind of damaging. Take a good deep in breath and then turn to the left. Again, just observing, being conscious of your aspiration, but aspiration is nothing without observation. So feel the physical sensations within the body and assess if you're pushing too hard or you're not pushing hard enough. All very well wanting to do the, kind of get your legs around the back of your head, but unless your body will allow you to do that, you're just going to injure yourself. So becoming conscious of the feeling of the pose and not pushing too far, but not kind of being too kind of jelly-like. There's a balance. So we draw those words, body, mind, and breath into a column rather than disparate places across the page. Come back to the center, just grip around your knees, come off your lift, and then just sit back on your heels for a moment. Just have the big toes together, the knees nice and wide, lift and open the chest, drive the chest upwards, and then hinge at the hips, come forwards, walk your hands forwards. Try and keep the seat bones down on the heels and bring the forehead down. If you can't bring your forehead down without kind of lifting the chest, lifting the seat bones like this, then put a block or a blanket between the seat bones and the heels. If the seat bones and the heels don't quite touch, but they're kind of maybe just a millimeter away, then just work to stretch from the hands down into the hips, the hands into the shoulders, the armpits into the hips. Breathe nice and deeply. Feel the stretch of the pose. It shouldn't just kind of hang around one particular area of the body. It should feel like you're stretching from the knees into the toes, from the knees into the hips, from the hips into the armpits into the hands into the fingers into the fingertips, and then the fingertips into the palms of the hands, into the elbows, into the shoulders, into the armpits, into the hips, and the hips into the knees into the shins to the ankles, to the tops of the feet, turning the tailbone in. So yogic pose is a radiation. We've got to know where we're radiating from. Come up onto all fours, toes under, and then come up into dog down. If you're not doing dog down, do setubandha. So Andrew, just maybe stick with the caution for the moment because of your shoulder, and just come up into just go into supta baddhakonasana. So don't push it too soon. So breathe in nice and softly, tightening the kneecaps, activating the legs, maintaining the fore ear and the hind ear and the lower ear hearing. Listen to the breath. Is your breath in one place on the page? Is your mind in another? Is your body in another? Try and squeeze them together into a column. Body, mind, and breath working in unison. Feeling the expansion of the chest as you inhale and exhale. Listening to the sounds of the breath. So determining your aspiration in the pose to do the best possible pose, but then observe where that is working. Is it are you overworking in the shoulders? Are you overworking in the hips? Or are you underworking in those regions? If there's discomfort, chances are you're underworking rather than overworking. So see if you can if it's uncomfortable in the shoulders, work the legs more. Breathe in nice and softly. Stretching yourself out, radiating outwards. Okay, step forwards, come up into a standing position. Just align the edge of your feet with the edge of your mat. Lift and open the chest. Raise your arms up, thumbs into the crease of the elbows, wrap your fingers around your elbows, and then hang down in Adho Mukha, in Uttanasana. Just use support. Just come halfway down if you've got back problems. Just be in the pose and breathe. So we start in the state of observation, and then we work towards activation. So the most obvious activation is the physical bodily activation, using techniques and muscles to bring the physical body alive. But through that action, we then determine our balance within the pose. So activation comes first with the body, and then with the conative mind, the aspiration to do our perfect pose. And then you activate the cognitive mind, the observer. You activate the exhalative breath and the inhalative breath, post-exhalative breath and the post-inhalative breath, with retentions, but we don't always do retentions. And we activate our senses for perception and for sensitivity and for mindset, body set, breath set. So we activate the body wholly in our asana. Okay, release your hands down to the floor, come forwards, lifting the chest, and then just come up into standing position. So just be in Tadasana, lifting and opening the chest, breathing nice and softly. So Utkatasana, the chair pose. The chair pose, we often think of it as a downward action pose because we raise the arms, we clamp the knees together, and then we kind of sit in this imaginary chair. But the action isn't downwards. The action maintains its upwardness from the hips up into the armpits, up into the arms. So bring your arms up into Urdhva-hastasana. So the palms of the hands, you can't see my hands, but palms of the hands are facing each other. And then you lengthen up into the little fingers. Spreading the palms, pressing the thumbs towards the back of the room, stretching the little fingers towards the front of the room and upwards. So they should feel like there's an action from the hips up into the armpits. And then in Utkatasana, we clamp the knees together and then tuck the tailbone inwards as we come down. Bend the knees, but keep reaching up. As you bend the knees, keep reaching up, lengthening into the little fingers, looking between the hands. Feeling that you can lift from, you're lifting up from the hips into the armpits, into the elbows, into the hands. Find a low seat. Breathe softly. Is the breath becoming laboured? And then straighten the legs and then come back into a standing position. So for some, if you've got short Achilles tendons, then you might want to stand on a blanket so that when you come down, the Achilles tendons are, you're not kind of overworking your Achilles tendons. The trick with this pose is to come down as low as you can, down to those little chairs that they have in junior schools. You want to try and sit on one of those, but you do this because this is quite a strenuous pose. You try and do that seated position without doing this. You often, when we're in the room together, you look around and people are kind of gritting their teeth and they're holding their breath. If you hold your breath, you become tired. So just reset your Tadasana. At the inner edge of the feet together, tighten the kneecaps, lift and open the chest like you're shooting up out of the feet. Suck the hips in so you get that tube of toothpaste action into the chest, and then bring the arms forwards and raise the arms up. Lift your toes to really sharpen the action of the legs. So before you even bend your knees, have your legs straight and then lift the toes so you sharpen the action of the legs. And you're not going to go down with the toes up, but it just sharpens the action of the legs to start off with. Squeeze the hips inwards, lengthen up into the chest. Bring the toes down, clamp the knees together, draw the abdomen towards the spine. Breathe softly as you come down. Find that low chair. Turning the tailbone in, drawing the abdomen towards the spine. Lifting up out of the hips, keep bending the knees, go down nice and low. Reach up into the little finger side. Breathing nice and softly. Okay, and then just gently come up and then come back into Tadasana. So quite strong, isn't it? Just feel your energy just returning with the breath. Just listening to the sounds of the breath as they enter and as they exit. Listening to the sound of the breath, feeling that the chest rises up. Just get a chair and we're just going to bring the right, so you're going to stand, do this sideways so you can see. We're going to just stand in Tadasana in front of the chair, and then we're going to raise up our right leg, and then again suck the hips in, lengthen up into the hips, and then turn. So it's a turn in action. So you need a chair, just to, or so, it doesn't have to be a chair, just a top of a sofa or whatever, something that's relatively firm, and then just be in Tadasana. Lift and open the chest. Feel that you can squeeze the hips in so that you can lengthen up into the chest. And then bend the right leg up, but maintain that standing leg like you're doing Vrksasana. So lift and open the chest, and then raise your arms up. Lift and open the chest. Rotate the standing thigh inwards so that you're really doing a good Tadasana with the leg, and then turn to the right side. Bring the left hand down onto the outside of the knee. Bring the other hand onto the small of the back. Lift the chest. Squeeze the hips in. Lift the chest and turn. So it's kind of a variation of supta, of padangusthasana, parsva in padangusthasana. Lift and open the chest and turn. It's a nice open, lifted spinal twist. And then come back to the center, just come back into Tadasana, lift and open the chest. Activate the legs really firmly. Keep the right leg firmly down, lift up into the, lift the left foot upwards, and then raise the arms up. Activate that standing leg really firmly, rotating the thigh inwards, but then lifting the inner knee up into the groin. Squeezing the hips together, turn to the left side, and then bring the arms down. Bring your right hand onto the outside of the left knee, the other hand into the small of the back. Lift and open the chest. Don't lose that standing leg. Sucking the hips inwards, lengthening up into the chest, and then turning. Feeling that there's levelness between body, mind, and breath. We're squeezing those elements together. So it's the breath. When you do something new or taxing, then the breath goes. So consciously focus on maintaining the breath as you turn. And then just gently release. Just come back into Tadasana, lift and open the chest. Feel that the legs, at first, maybe they don't feel even. So even out the effort of the legs. Using the cognitive mind to observe. Using the conative mind to draw aspiration into the pose. So one more time, we're going to do that same pose on the, so you're going to stand on the left leg, lift up the right leg, lift and open the chest, and then turn. So notice if there's any difference in the pose, in the feeling of the pose when we didn't raise our arms up first and turn. So is there any difference in the stability of the pose? Is there any difference in the lifting of the chest? See if you can squeeze the hips in, lengthen from the hips up into the armpits. And then just gently come back to the center, lift and open the chest. And then just bring up the left leg standing on the right leg, lift the chest and turn. So you really work to kind of turn the chest. But when we don't raise the arms first, is there the same level of lift in the spine? Can you activate the hips sucking inwards, tube of toothpaste in up into the chest? Turn it. Breathing nice and softly in through the nose, out through the nose. Press in the back hand firmly into the small of the back. Okay, and then just gently come back to the center. Just move your chair out of the way. And then just come down onto your, sit back on your shins. So another pose that we don't do very often is pavritta parsvakonasana. Maybe it's a bit intense to do this on a Monday, but it's a good way to kind of wake the body up, isn't it? So at first, I want you to just sit on your shins. Really feel that the shins are making really good contact. The blade of the shin is just pressing down into the floor. There's extension from the knee down into the toes. There's activation. There's aspiration in the shin to extend. And then there's observation of the shin to determine the level of extension. So keep the feet pressing down, keep the shins pressing down, and then come up onto all fours. Have your hands on your hips. So Andrew, this might be a little strong for your kind of your shoulder. So I'll give you a slight variation. So just stay on your shins, just try and work the shins down into the floor. Just stay at this stage first, lift and open the chest, almost like we were going to go into the camel pose, pressing the shins down into the floor. But in a moment, you're going to bring your right knee forwards like we did just a moment ago. So if you've got problematic shoulders, you're just going to turn, just like we did on the chair. You're just going to turn. If there's no problem with the shoulders, if there's problems with back, you might want to just turn as well. Otherwise, you bring the abdomen from the left to the right, bring the outer elbow down onto the outer knee. I'm showing you this the wrong way around, really. So you turn and you bring the outer elbow onto the outer knee, keep turning the chest, and then see if you can reach the floor. If you can't reach the floor, then you use a block. So there's this turn of the chest. Bring your small of the hand into the small of the back, turn your toes under, and then you're going to see if you can straighten the back leg and turn. So let's do that together. So we'll do the right side first. So feel that you're pressing down into the shins. Just sit down into the shins, lift and open the chest, squeeze the hips in, lift into the chest, because turns require length and extension of the spine. If you just let yourself slump and then try and turn, you're immediately restricted. So we try and lift from the hips up into the armpits. So there's a really good lift of the chest. Have the feet hip width apart, and then press into the feet, lift and open the chest, have your hands on your hips. Bring your right knee forwards, press the shin of that left foot into the floor, squeeze the hips, lift and open the chest. And then you're either just going to turn and just do a similar pose to last time, just sucking the hips in and lifting the chest. Otherwise, you're going to turn and then you bring the abdomen across from the left to the right, bring the outer elbow into the knee, and then just reach down and find the block. Keep the other hand in the small of the back if you can. And then turn the toes under that left foot and then straighten that left leg. But the turning of the chest isn't over. Extend from the hips into the armpits and turn the chest a little more. Breathe in nice and softly. So straightening that back leg. So Andrew, I think that you need to be a little bit wider with, so step back a little bit more with that back leg if you can. Good, okay, and then uncoil and then sit back on your heels. So quite strong. It's a real kind of, there's not many subtle actions in this, is there? It's all kind of gross action, isn't it? But we bring the subtle actions in later on, perhaps. But at first, it's just a real kind of action of turning the chest, isn't it? So just sit on your hips, sit on your shins, just lift and open the chest. Feel that the chest can rise up energetically. And then come onto your shins and then bring the left leg forwards. Lift and open the chest and then turn. Just to do the first stage, just lifting and opening the chest and then turning. Squeezing the hips in, lengthening from the hips up into the armpits and turning the chest. Breathing nice and softly. And then take hold of that left leg with the left hand and then reach around. So you draw the abdomen from the right to the left and then bring the outer elbow into the outer knee. And then before you do anything else, lift the chest again and turn. And then see if you can reach down and find the block. Bring the other hand into the small of the back. Turn your toes under of that back foot. And then straighten the leg. Lengthen the chest and turn a little more. Breathe nice and softly. Smile. It's actually quite hard to smile in this one, isn't it? Breathe nice and softly. Turn in the chest. Straightening that back leg. Okay, and then just gently uncoil. Sit back on your heels. And then stretch forwards into Adho Mukha Virasana. So when we do a pose that we don't do very often, like pavritta, parsvakonasana, can you determine between the aspiration to do the best pose that you possibly can and that cognitive aspect of the brain where you work to observe, where you work to kind of analyze the shape of the pose. Okay, everyone, sit back on your heels and then just come down into supta baddhakonasana. If you want to, you can come up into a headstand. Otherwise, just come into supta baddhakonasana. So sometimes when we have that option of going up into the headstand or supta baddhakonasana, sometimes we really want to do the headstand. But does the body want to do the headstand? Does the physical body feel that the headstand is right for you today? And there's always times when we do the pose out of duty because we feel like we should do it. But should is a guilt word, isn't it? So we determine between the volition, the conative mind, and the cognitive mind. Maybe if the cognitive mind is uncertain, we do the pose, but we do it with real deep observation. So if you're upside down, if you're in headstand, push from the elbows into the armpits, suck the armpits in to lift up into the hips, suck the hips in to lengthen up into the legs, and vice versa. But it's an upward action. I often say yoga is about defying gravity, finding lightness where there's usually heaviness. So whichever pose that you're doing, do it with softness in the breath. Do it with a balance between aspiration and observation. Do it with consciousness of the hind ear hearing and the fore ear hearing and the lower ear hearing. Do it with softness in the jaw. If you're in headstand, that doesn't come easily. So you have to consciously release the jaw, release the lower teeth away from the upper teeth. Soften the tongue and the throat. Soften the inner ears. Soften the breath. Become really conscious of the breath. Again, is there a disparation between the positioning of body, mind, and breath, or can you squeeze those together into a neat column? So body, mind, and breath working in unison. If you're still in headstand, just bring yourself down and come into supta baddhakonasana when you've recovered. So in supta baddhakonasana, I want everyone to raise your arms up towards the ceiling. But as you raise your arms up, I want you to do that with consciousness in the shoulder blades. So sometimes when you raise up with kind of real determination, and the arms extend up, but you lose the base of the pose. So you've got to use the cognitive brain to observe the outer edge of the shoulder blades, try and keep them down flat onto the floor, and then lengthen up into the arms. And there's a different action in the arms. The action of the arms feels more grounded. Interlock your fingers so that the palms are facing your head, and then turn the palms of the hands all the way up to face the ceiling. Bend your elbows in towards each other, spread the palms, and then lengthen your arms over your head along the floor. If you've got stiffness of your shoulders, then just put some blocks or some lifts underneath your hands so that you don't overwork your shoulders. So Andrew, maybe you might want to just see how it feels, but don't overdo it. So you can bring your hands to the sides of the body if it feels too strong for your shoulder. Or you can just keep the arms reaching up towards the ceiling. Find what kind of works for you at this precise moment. So we're lengthening from the armpits into the elbows, into the wrists, into the palms. We're lengthening from the armpits down into the hips. Observe the abdomen, broaden from the abdomen all the way out into the abdominal walls, drawing the abdominal walls down to the floor. So that it kind of softens the curvature of the lumbar. Lengthen from the inner groin into the inner knee. And from the inner knee to the outer knee, and from the outer knee down into the outer shin, outer calf muscle, into the outer heel. And then from the outer heel into the inner heel, from the inner heel into the inner calf to the inner knee around to the outer knee up along the outside of the thigh into the hip. And then we start again drawing the inner groin out into the outer knee. But maintaining those abdominal walls drawing down, the shoulder blades flat onto the floor, the arms extending away. Just release your arms, just swap the interlock of your fingers, and then just raise the arms and extend them along the floor again. Just notice if there's any subtle differences in, just because you swap the interlock of the fingers, any subtle differences in the shoulders or in the abdomen or in the hips. Breathe in nice and softly, just working with aspiration, but working with cognition, with observation. Okay, release your arms and then just rest your arms on your lower ribs. Just observe your breath, just soften the pose a little. Just feel the external changes that accompany the breath. And then just gently draw your knees towards each other. Press the knees together, have the feet apart, just rest down into the floor. So the knees are together, the feet are apart, just closing the action of the hips a little. And then just draw your knees into your chest, just have a little rock from side to side, from top to bottom, just giving yourself just a gentle massage on the spine. And then we're going to go up into, briefly, go up into setubandha. If you're not doing setubandha, just hold on to the sides of the mat. You can have a lift underneath your lower back and lengthen the legs up into viparita karani. Otherwise, pull the feet towards you, lift the seat bones up off the floor, just adjust the triceps around to the biceps so you come right up onto the tops of the shoulders, and then place the brick in the sacrum area of your back. Hold on to the edges of your mat, and then either stay with bent knees or straighten the legs out. Do one at a time, just make sure that feels okay in your back. If it does, just stretch the legs out and away. So you get this good, tremendous stretch around the abdomen, around the front of the hip. Activate the legs as though you're in Tadasana. Have the big toes pointing directly to 12 o'clock. Rotating the thighs inwards. Breathing nice and softly, keeping the chest lifted. Staying right on the tops of the shoulders. Just listening to the sound of the breath. Okay, just briefly, staying in supta baddhakonasana, in setubandha, just gently walk your feet back to the block and then lift the seat bones, remove the block, and then pull your knees in towards your chest. Just have a little rock side to side, top to bottom, just giving yourself a gentle massage on the spine. And then just rock yourself up into a seated position. Blanket for your head, making sure that it's evenly folded. Move any equipment out of the way that might kind of just get in the way of your final shavasana. Take your glasses off if you're wearing them, just to rest your face. And then just release into the floor. Allow the body to become heavy on the floor. So this ability to relax requires effort. You have to unhook the muscles. So it requires conscious effort to relax. So allow the body to just become a dead weight, resting into the floor. When we let go completely with the body, after a little while, the feeling of our energy rises to the uppermost skin. So the body and the mind and the breath can come into some kind of unity. Use the in-breath and the out-breath to distribute that feeling of almost tingling energy evenly throughout the limbs and the head. So the tips of the fingers, the tops of the toes feel light and energized. The arms feel full of energy. Chest and legs and the head. Ready to disturb yourself, just gently wriggle your toes, wriggle your fingers, just bringing yourself back into this pose of Shavasana. And then bend your knees, pull your knees in towards your chest, just have a little rock from side to side, from top to bottom, just giving yourself a grounding massage on the spine, just feeling the connection between the skin and the floor. Just bringing you back into this physical body. And then roll onto your right side. Just stay down for a breath or two. And then just straighten out the top leg. Come up into a seated position. Just a final, excuse me, cross legs with your hands in Namaste. Just a final spinal lift. Draw your breath in through your nose and out through your nose. Draw the breath in through the nose down into the abdomen. Conscious of the energy that you've released through your practice this morning, that good, positive, healthy flow of clean energy that the extensions, the forward bends, the twists, the inversions bring to the body and to the mind. Then draw your chin down to meet your chest. Spend a moment to acknowledge the positive energy you've created inside. And then just send some of that positive energy out into the world. And then just gently release the backs of your hands down towards your knees, palms facing upwards. And as you raise your head, allow your eyes to softly open and focus to softly come back. Thank you very much. Thank you. So hopefully you feel nice and light on the inside. You've given yourself a good kind of twisting of the spine just to release your energy, and you have lots of energy to do lots of positive things for the rest of your day. So thank you very much.